Joyce Meyer's childhood was anything but the fairy tale many would expect for someone who would go on to become a globally recognized voice of empowerment. Born in St. Louis, Missouri in 1943, Joyce's early years were marked by darkness, neglect, and suffering. Her father, a military man, was often absent, leaving Joyce to grow up in an emotionally cold environment, primarily under the care of her distant and uninvolved mother. Yet, it was not just emotional neglect that shaped her early life. What Joyce endured was far darker. Behind closed doors, Joyce was subjected to unimaginable abuse at the hands of her own father. She was sexually abused, a secret she buried deep within for many years. This unimaginable trauma set the stage for a lifetime of pain, yet paradoxically, it would later fuel her deep empathy and drive to heal others. Despite growing up in a world of silence and shame, Joyce would one day take her painful past and turn it into a mission. But how did this devastating chapter of her life shape her future? And how did she ultimately rise from the ashes of her past to become the influential woman she is today? The answers lie in the trauma that would haunt her for years to come, and the faith that would ultimately become her guiding light. The scars from Joyce Meyer's childhood didn't fade with time. In fact, they grew deeper, leaving wounds that couldn't easily be seen by the outside world. Joyce often describes how her father's abuse left emotional scars that would define much of her early adulthood. Despite the deep pain she carried inside, Joyce learned to keep her struggles hidden, even from those closest to her. Shame and fear gripped her heart, and the weight of this secret kept her trapped in a prison of her own making. For many years, Joyce was unable to speak about the abuse, silenced by feelings of confusion, guilt, and worthlessness. While others saw her as a successful woman with everything to offer, the truth was, she was fighting a constant battle within. She questioned her value and her place in the world, unsure how to reconcile the image of herself with the trauma she couldn't escape. But amidst all of this pain, something miraculous happened. Joyce found solace in her faith. It wasn't an instant cure, but faith slowly became the foundation of her healing. Yet, the wounds from her past didn't disappear overnight, and the memories of her father's betrayal would continue to resurface, leaving her to grapple with the complexity of trust and healing. Could she ever truly forgive herself? Could she ever learn to trust again? Joyce's journey was only just beginning, and the answers would take time, but faith was her lifeline. By her late teens, Joyce Meyer knew that she had to escape the painful grip of her past. She was desperate for a new beginning, and she hoped that marriage would provide the fresh start she so desperately needed. Joyce married a man named Dave Meyer, believing that this new relationship would offer stability and a chance to build a family away from the shadows of her childhood. But even in the safety of her marriage, Joyce found that the deep scars of her past continued to linger, threatening to undo the peace she had hoped for. Her relationship with Dave was, in many ways, a refuge from the chaos of her earlier years. Unlike her father, Dave was supportive and loving, offering Joyce the kind of security she had longed for as a child. But despite this newfound stability, Joyce still struggled with feelings of unworthiness. She constantly felt that she wasn't deserving of love or happiness. The trauma from her past didn't just vanish because she was in a loving marriage. The psychological damage from years of abuse and neglect ran deep, leaving Joyce with a painful sense of inadequacy. It was through this struggle that Joyce's faith began to play a more pivotal role in her life. As she leaned into her relationship with God, she began to discover a glimmer of hope. Joyce began to believe that healing was possible, though it would be a long and difficult journey. Could she truly escape the pain of her past? Would she ever feel whole again? Joyce's search for answers and healing became her guiding mission, a mission that would eventually help thousands of others heal from their own struggles. Her personal pain, it seemed, had a greater purpose, one that she was only beginning to understand. Despite the comfort of marriage and her growing faith, Joyce's mental health remained fragile. Depression and anger were constant companions in her life, and it seemed like she was always battling inner demons. Her emotional struggles weren't just limited to the past trauma, but were also linked to the pressures of her early ministry work. She started to realize that she needed professional help, which led her on a long journey of therapy, prayer, and self-reflection. Though the darkness never fully disappeared, Joyce worked hard to manage her emotions and find peace. As Joyce Meyer's faith grew stronger, so did her calling. She began teaching Bible studies and speaking at local churches, where people started to notice her unique way of communicating. In the early days of her ministry, Joyce found herself standing in front of small groups, speaking from the heart about the pain she had endured. Her message resonated with people who were suffering in silence, just as she once had. This was the beginning of her career as a Christian speaker, one that would eventually span the globe. But the journey was far from easy. As Joyce Meyer's ministry skyrocketed, so did the public's expectations of her. People from all walks of life saw her as a beacon of hope, a woman who had defied unimaginable odds to not only survive but thrive. Her incredible story of overcoming personal tragedies, including the abuse she suffered as a child, inspired thousands, if not millions, of people around the world. For many, Joyce was the living proof that faith could heal even the deepest wounds. Her followers admired her strength, her wisdom, and her unwavering devotion to God, and they looked up to her as a source of inspiration. But with this admiration came immense pressure. Joyce soon found herself placed on a pedestal, expected to be flawless, constantly radiant, and above the struggles that many others faced. While she certainly shared her testimony of overcoming past pain, the truth was that the weight of these high expectations often took a toll on her. The persona of a perfect preacher became an impossible standard to live up to. Every word she spoke, every action she took, seemed to carry the weight of an entire community's hopes and dreams. In public, Joyce was the epitome of grace. She spoke vulnerably about her past, sharing how her faith had played a key role in her healing. Her openness about her struggles was a powerful part of her message, resonating deeply with those who were also fighting their own battles. Yet, behind the scenes, the emotional scars from her past often resurfaced in unexpected ways. The trauma she had experienced as a child didn't simply vanish with her success. It lingered, resurfacing when she least expected it. Joyce found herself struggling to reconcile the image she projected as a perfect, triumphant leader with the reality of her ongoing emotional battles. It was this internal conflict, the battle between the woman the world expected her to be and the woman she truly was, that left Joyce feeling emotionally drained at times. She began to wonder if she could ever live up to the perfect image that others had created for her. The pressure to maintain this facade, coupled with the raw, painful memories from her past, created a constant tug-of-war inside her. She questioned her own worthiness and whether she could ever be fully free from the haunting remnants of her early life. The strain of trying to meet everyone's expectations while silently fighting her own demons left Joyce feeling isolated. Her internal struggles became a source of emotional exhaustion, making her question whether she was strong enough to keep going. But this inner turmoil also became the very thing that made Joyce even more relatable to her audience. Through her vulnerability, she continued to show that healing was not a linear path. It was a constant journey. And even those who appeared to have it all together had their own battles to fight. The more she shared about her struggles, the more people connected with her. Yet the burden of this public life weighed heavily on Joyce, leaving her torn between the woman she had to be in the eyes of the world and the woman she truly was. Someone still learning to heal, to forgive, and to live fully in the freedom of God's love. Joyce Meyer's personal life was far from the picture-perfect image many might expect from a woman who had built such a powerful ministry. Behind the scenes, her marriage to Dave Meyer, despite being a source of support and partnership, was not without its own set of challenges. Joyce's passion for her calling often left her feeling conflicted, torn between the needs of her growing ministry and the needs of her family. The demands of her global outreach required constant travel, long hours, and endless commitments, leaving Joyce feeling like she was constantly being pulled in two different directions. At times, the pressure was so intense that Joyce couldn't help but wonder if she was unintentionally neglecting her children. As a mother, she had always vowed to be a nurturing and present figure in their lives, but the reality of her busy schedule often made that difficult. Her children were growing up, and Joyce, despite all of her accomplishments, realized that she was missing precious moments with them. The emotional toll of balancing her calling and her family life weighed heavily on her, often causing her to question whether she was making the right choices. The strain on her marriage was palpable as well. While Dave was supportive of Joyce's ministry, he too felt the absence of his wife at times. Joyce was committed to spreading her message of healing and faith, but this commitment often came at the expense of her family life. Joyce found herself reflecting on her own childhood, particularly the absence of her own parents and the painful memories it left. She vowed not to repeat the same mistakes with her children, but the growing demands of her ministry seemed to make that goal more and more elusive. However, despite these tensions, Joyce and Dave's relationship endured. Their marriage became a testament to resilience, faith, and mutual support. They navigated through the challenges together, leaning on each other during the toughest times. Even though Joyce's ministry demanded so much of her, she remained deeply committed to her family, understanding that without their love and support, she couldn't continue to do the work she was so passionate about. Through the highs and lows, Joyce and Dave built a strong partnership, demonstrating that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges, love, faith, and commitment could guide them through. Joyce's personal life, with its ups and downs, mirrors the struggles many people face in their own relationships. The emotional complexities of balancing family and a demanding career are something most can relate to. But for Joyce, it became an ongoing lesson in learning to make peace with her choices, finding ways to be present for her family, while still fulfilling the purpose she believed she was called to. As Joyce Meyer's ministry grew at an astonishing rate, so did the weight of her responsibilities. What began as a small outreach blossomed into a worldwide ministry, requiring Joyce to travel extensively, speak at large conferences, and manage a complex business operation behind the scenes. But with each success, the pressure mounted. The constant demands on her time and energy began to take a serious toll on her physical and mental well-being. The stress became unbearable. Joyce found herself battling chronic pain, intense fatigue, and overwhelming anxiety. At times, the exhaustion was so severe that it left her questioning whether she could continue at the pace she had set for herself. The once vibrant and energetic woman now found herself drained, physically and emotionally, struggling to keep up with the demands of a ministry that required her to be everywhere, all the time. It wasn't long before Joyce began experiencing symptoms that hinted at something much more serious. Her body was sending signals, persistent health issues that she couldn't ignore any longer. At one point, the fear of a potentially life-threatening illness loomed over her. The physical toll she was experiencing was no longer just a side effect of stress. It was a wake-up call, forcing her to slow down and face the truth. Her health could no longer be sacrificed at the altar of ministry success. For the first time in years, Joyce had to step back and reevaluate her life. It was a moment of profound reflection. How had she reached this point? Was the pursuit of her calling worth the cost to her well-being? Her mind was filled with doubt and questions. Could she continue to inspire and uplift others if she was barely able to take care of herself? The weight of these realizations was crushing, but they sparked a much-needed transformation in her approach to both life and ministry. In the face of these health challenges, Joyce turned to her faith for strength. She leaned on the very principles she had preached to countless others over the years: the importance of rest, self-care, and trusting in God's plan. Slowly but surely, she started making changes, embracing a new balance between work and personal health. Yet even in the midst of these struggles, she refused to let her difficulties silence her mission. Joyce used her platform not only to share her personal journey with her followers, but also to encourage others facing similar battles. She became a beacon of hope for those struggling with the same emotional and physical challenges. Despite the painful realities of her own situation, Joyce pushed forward, determined to turn her hardships into a source of empowerment for others. Her story became not just one of triumph, but one of resilience and the power of faith to heal even the deepest wounds. In the end, Joyce Meyer's health struggles didn't define her. They refined her. They pushed her to rethink what it truly meant to serve, to lead, and to be the woman God had called her to be. Her journey through illness, recovery, and eventual rebirth served as a reminder to her followers that even in the darkest moments, there is always room for hope, healing, and the strength to keep moving forward. Throughout her life, Joyce Meyer has faced the profound pain of losing loved ones, an experience that would come to challenge the very foundation of her strength. Among the most heartbreaking losses was the death of her mother, with whom Joyce had a complicated and often strained relationship. Despite the emotional distance that had built up over the years between them, especially after Joyce had endured years of trauma and neglect as a child, the passing of her mother hit her with a force she hadn't expected. The pain was not just from the loss of a parent, but from the unresolved emotions that lingered from their difficult relationship. Joyce had spent much of her life trying to reconcile her feelings about her mother, but her death left her with a mix of grief, regret, and confusion. It was as though, in that moment, a chapter of her life that she had tried to close was ripped wide open once again. But the heartbreak didn't end there. The loss of her mother was soon followed by the passing of other beloved family members and friends, each loss adding another layer of sorrow and reminding Joyce of how fragile life truly is. These deaths forced Joyce to confront not only her grief, but also the deep-seated fears she had long tried to bury. Fears of abandonment, of being left behind, of losing the people she loved without warning. As a woman who had spent so much of her life building a powerful, unshakable public image, These personal tragedies struck at the core of her identity. She had spent decades encouraging others to overcome adversity, yet in these moments of loss, she found herself grappling with the same vulnerabilities that all humans face. In the midst of her incredible success, speaking to millions, spreading a message of hope and healing, Joyce realized that even those who seem the strongest, the most put together, are not immune to the pain of life's inevitable losses. The public persona that had made her a household name, a symbol of resilience and faith, now seemed like a distant echo in the face of such raw, personal grief. For the first time in a long while, Joyce was forced to acknowledge the depth of her own humanity, the vulnerability, the longing, and the heartache that comes with being human. This period of mourning wasn't just a time of sorrow, though. It also became a pivotal turning point in Joyce's journey of healing. With every loss, she learned a little more about the true nature of grief, the importance of emotional connection, and the need for healing not just of the body but of the heart. It was through these devastating experiences that Joyce came to understand that strength doesn't always mean standing tall without breaking. Sometimes it means acknowledging our pain and allowing ourselves to heal from it. Even in the darkest moments, Joyce's story serves as a reminder that no matter how strong we appear, we all carry burdens and must learn to navigate them with grace and resilience. Despite the countless tragedies and unimaginable struggles that have shaped her life, Joyce Meyer has emerged as one of the most influential and respected figures in the Christian ministry world. From a childhood filled with deep pain and abuse to years of personal battles with mental health, Joyce's journey is nothing short of extraordinary. She could have easily allowed the weight of her past to define her, yet instead, she transformed her experiences into a beacon of hope for others. Her platform, now a global ministry, has become a source of healing, forgiveness, and personal strength for millions of people. Joyce doesn't just preach these messages, she embodies them in the most authentic way possible. She has never been afraid to share her deepest scars with the world, revealing the raw truth about her own pain. By doing so, she has built an unparalleled connection with her audience, showing them that no matter how dark the path may seem, they too can overcome life's greatest challenges. Her openness and vulnerability have made her a trusted figure, someone people turn to not just for spiritual guidance, but for genuine, heartfelt empathy. What's even more remarkable is how Joyce Meyer's tragedy doesn't define her, but rather fuels her purpose. While the scars of her past will always be a part of her story, she has never allowed them to hold her back. In fact, it is through those very struggles that she discovered her greatest strength. Joyce found peace not by erasing the hurt, but by transforming it, turning her pain into a powerful message of hope and redemption for others. She teaches that peace isn't about forgetting the wounds. It's about learning how to live with them and still move forward. Her legacy isn't just about her success or the millions of books and sermons she's shared. It's about something much deeper, her unparalleled ability to connect with people on a profoundly human level.